morning and thanks so much for being with us here on India Today. You're watching the Business Today show with me, Chaiti Narula, and let's take a look at the top headlines at this hour. It's a Business Today exclusive. CEO of the largest semiconductor company in the world declares the chip crisis is over. Qualcomm's chief says India's push for semiconductor Atmanirbhar will have a big global impact. Positive global cues lift the Lal Street. Sensex gains over 1,200 points. Nifty reclaims 17,000. Financials lead the stellar rally. Gold finally finds some traction amongst the investors in the festival season. Ends at a 3-week high. Is it finally the right time to place a bet on the yellow metal? The central government may be forced to trim its expenditure. Sources tell Business Today TV that the step may have to be taken to adjust the additional burden of the extension and free ration scheme. Retail passenger vehicle sales up 11% in September. Dealers say the festive season could be the best in a decade. Maruti tells Business Today TV it is expecting a record sale this year. European Union passes a single charger law. USB Type-C port is going to be the new standard for portable devices by the end of 2024. A huge impact on Apple, which will have to move away from its lightning chargers. After days of gloom and doom, bulls were back on the Dalal Street today in the intraday trading session. A global rebound in the market sentiment propelled the domestic equities higher. The Sensex and Nifty both surged over 2% each. Sensex was back above the 58,000 mark and Nifty reclaimed the 17,000 level, 17,274 to be precise. All the sectoral indices closed in the greens, as you can see on your screens. It was the banking and the financial stocks that led the stellar rally. IndusInd Bank was the top gainer on the Nifty, up over 5% after the lender reported rise in the market share in Q2. Adani Ports, Bajaj Finance, TCS, Coal India were the other blue chip gainers. On account of the hawkish central banks across the world and the retreat in dollar index, gold prices have bounced back strongly. The yellow metal has over the years been a perfect hedge against inflation. And with the economic uncertainties on the rise, should you be investing in gold this festive season or not? My colleague Sakshi Batra spoke to Ajay Kedia from Kedia Advisory about the outlook for gold going forward. Listen in.
Mr. Kedia, I'm sure that everyone who is talking to you these days must be asking you whether they should invest in gold right now. I mean, last 3 months, we've actually seen gold prices trending downwards, declining over 7%. Does it really give investors a great entry point at this point in time to enter into gold?
See, actually, whatever the environment, what we have seen in 2022 is actually supportive for gold, because generally we know gold, whenever there is a geopolitical tension, inflation concern, recession concern, equity market is slightly on higher side, we see generally it's a perfect blend for gold to perform. But since January till now, no doubt on MCX, we have seen, Indian market, we have seen because of higher import duty and rupee weakness, gold is still showing some gains. But if we see in international market, we have seen almost from $1,850 to $1,620, there was a fall. That was because of Fed continuously pushed the interest rate on higher side. We have seen almost 3% rate hike from US Fed. That was the major chunk. Because of that, gold was underperforming because dollar index went up to 114 level, which is almost 20 years high. But now things have been subsidizing, because yesterday there was a news coming from UN that has clearly warned all central banks they should review their policy to strengthening with the help of interest rate hike, because that can drive all economy in recession. So I think it's a perfect combination we have already with we have in 2022, and I am very hopeful in next 6 to 8 months, gold would definitely gives us at least a double-digit return. What we have seen in the year 2008 to 2011, where global crisis has arisen, and now also the same situation arises in front of us.
But if one were to really invest into gold at this point in time, we are spoiled for choice. It's not just the physical gold. We have gold ETFs, we have mutual fund, we have digital gold. Which is the most advisable and most affordable form of buying gold that you would recommend this festive season?
So actually, I would really appreciate government steps to come up with various avenues to park investment in face of gold, because up to 2030 we don't have any other option rather than going with a physical, which will containing the making charges or impurity concerns and all. But now with the help of gold souvenir bond, or we can say we have distinguished between our investment gold demand and physical gold demand. So I would really appreciate if suppose somebody is want to invest in gold. I'm talking about invest, not consumption. If you want to consume gold, you can directly buy jewelry and all. But for investment purpose, my first preference would be gold souvenir bond, because that carry some part of interest rate also, that is 2.5%, which will definitely add some return, some alpha to your returns. And second would be definitely go with we can say ETF, and last would be physical. If suppose somebody still loves to hold physically gold, then also. But digital, there is some ambiguity still going on, because as per regulator, we don't have a certain regulation. But I think ETF and gold souvenir bond would be my first choice to buy gold.
It could be the best festival season for car sales in the past 10 years. According to the FADA, the Association of Car Dealers in the country, the overall sales were up 11% in September to 14.6 lakh units. The sales are, however, still below the pre-COVID 2019 levels. Passenger vehicle sales were up nearly 10% in September, while two-wheeler sales rose 9%. It is a good sign for the economy as such. Commercial vehicle sales rose 19% in September. The FADA expects strong retail sale in October on the back of the festive season. Maruti, meanwhile, seems to be getting some of its mojo back with the introduction of the Grand Vitara in the mid-SUV segment. The hybrid has clocked more than 60,000 bookings. My colleague Chetan Bhutani spoke to Shashank Srivastava, the company's executive director, about the festive season and the long waiting periods.
September month for the industry was pretty good, I would say, because it was a record month in terms of dispatches. This was the highest ever dispatches in the industry at 355,000 plus, actually almost close to 356,000. And this is following the previous highest, which was in July of 342,000. So the quarter was great from a dispatch perspective, 1 million plus in the quarter, which is also for the first time ever in Indian auto industry's history. And H1 was 1.937 million, which bodes very well for the H2 as well. And it's estimated in the industry we could see almost 3.8 million cars sold in the fiscal year. So having said that, it was also reflected in Maruti Suzuki's numbers, 148,400 for domestic passenger vehicles against 63,100 of last year. But then remember, last year is probably not a good base to compare with, because last year the September 1 was affected to a large extent by the semiconductor. In fact, the problem was at a peak in September of last year.
Right. Tell us about how the bookings and the dispatches and the deliveries are looking like for the Grand Vitara.
So Grand Vitara bookings crossed 60,000 numbers. We have also started the sale of the Grand Vitara. We announced the prices as well as the sale starting 26th of September, which was the first day of the Navratra. So last month, we could sell about 4,800 Grand Vitaras. And as we ramp up production, we hope to reduce the waiting period, which has built up because we have almost 60,000 pending bookings as well. So it's been a great response, I would say. And it is also, hopefully, it will give us a good volume and market share in the mid-SUV segment, which had actually been pulling us down in terms of market share in the last few months.
Tell us about the festive sales. overall sales for the festive season? How are you anticipating now? Because we are in the middle of the festive season. Do you anticipate good sales right now? And also, do you look at clearing the backlog quite soon?
So backlog clearance, of course, depends on the production, how much close it can be with in terms of matching with the underlying demand pattern that we see. But so far, of course, we still see in terms of production levels and some models not being able to match with that pattern. So for us, for example, XL6 or Ertiga or Brezza or Vitara, Desire, Swift, they are still having a long waiting list and long pending bookings. Pending booking for Maruti Suzuki is actually 412,000 at the moment. On the other hand, some places where we have been able to reduce waiting periods have been in the 1 liter production, of which those vehicles have been pretty good, like in Wagoner, in Alto, in Espresso, and in Celerio. So there seems to be some sort of a disbalance, you can say, between the waiting periods are quite different for different models. And that indicates that the semiconductor issue is not fully settled, maybe 94, 95%. At the model level, we need to see how production proceeds for us to be able to predict how the October sales will be. But if we are able to do the production according to those underlying demand pattern, I see very good sales in October as well.
The central government may be forced to cut some of the expenditure to balance this year's budget. And according to official sources, the recent decision to extend the free ration scheme by 3 months till December may just require some expenditure curbs to balance out the budget. My colleague Karishma Asudani now joins in with these exclusive details. Karishma, how do you think and how essential are these expenditure cuts? Is the government likely to do this to inch them closer to the fiscal deficit targets in the budget?
Well, the government's recent decision to extend the 5 kilogram of grains per month has put their checks and balances in jeopardy, as per Finance Ministry sources. The creme de la creme of the Finance Ministry is now set to begin their meetings on the upcoming union budget on October 10th and will be focusing their discussions on the expenditure rationalization to see if there is a balancing of the additional cost. In fact, what we are picking up is in order to balance all their expenditure and revenue, government may look at systematic improvements and better checks on ancillary costs. They may adopt a uniform interest rate regime for all states when it comes to grain borrowing. They may also look at scheme restructuring of the PMGYAY with the help of DFPD, which is Department of Food and Public Distribution. The government last week, in fact, also slashed its borrowing target by rupees 10,000 crore for financial year 2023, indicating good tax collections that would be enough to bear their additional expenses. But as per sources, government is a bit worried on the non-tax revenues, but they are hoping small savings and provident fund receipts will help in their revenue balance by the end of the fiscal year.
All right, thanks, Karishma, for that. Moving on now, the government will be setting up 25,000 new telecom towers in the next 500 days. In a big move to improve the telecom coverage and connectivity, the government has planned to invest 260 billion rupees in this sector. This project is going to be financed through the Universal Services Obligation Fund and implemented by Bharat Broadband Network. The announcement for the new towers is coming just 3 days after the launch of 5G telecom services by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India's first semiconductor lab in Mohali is now all set to get a second lease of life. And according to reports, the government plans to spend up to $1.3 billion to modernize and upgrade the semiconductor laboratory, SCL campus in Mohali. The expenditure, the reports say, is a part of the government's $10 billion semiconductor incentive package. The SCL was set up in the year 1983 and is currently under the IT Ministry. The facility, which is currently capable of manufacturing 118 nanometer chips, will be able to produce 28 nanometer chips after the proposed upgrade. The technology is still far behind in the frontrunners like Apple, who will be using 3 nanometer chips in its next generation of semiconductors. Slipping to a very short commercial break. There's lots more coming up on the other side. Stay with us right here on India Today. back and thanks for staying with us here. You're watching the Business Today show. The global semiconductor shortage that has played havoc with all the sectors from auto to medical equipment, from smart gadgets to communications is finally over. This is what the president and CEO of the $132 billion Qualcomm said in an exclusive interview with Business Today TV managing editor Siddharth Sarabi. The company, which is the world's largest fabless semiconductor maker, also feels the sheer scale of adoption of 5G in India is going to be setting a global precedent. Let's listen in.
You made a very interesting comment a little while ago. You said every G has solved a problem when it comes to telecommunications. So what problem will 5G solve for Indians?
That's great. Well, happy to be here talking to you. Look, 5G, it's an incredible opportunity for transformation. And what 5G will do, it will enable, I think, the globe and of course India to create a gigabit connected society when 5G will be the last mile technology for everything, not only phones, but cars and this industrial IoT devices and many other things. And 5G, it's a technology that will not only provide a gigabit speeds to everything, but will for the first time, it will be a wireless technology that can support mission critical services. And what I mean by that is you're going to have now a reliable connection to the cloud and a connection you can depend on. That becomes extremely important for applications such as autonomous cars, telemedicine, manufacturing equipment that needs the precision and the reliability. At the same time, as you are connected with the cloud, those two are going to be like one computer. And one of the things that 5G will do will democratize computing power, allowing any device to tap into the cloud for as much computing power as you need. So it's an incredible technology revolution, and it comes at the right moment in time for India when so many things are happening as India is building its digital plan.
For those Indians who may not be as technically sort of aware about cloud and other terms, how would you simplify it if I asked you that is it for most Indians that 5G will only mean more efficient networks, lesser call drops, or at least better data rates, perhaps at slightly higher cost than what they pay for it right now?
Look, it's a great way to put it. So thinking about what it means to the Indian consumer, and I will start with the phone. The first thing that you'll be able to see with 5G is you have higher speeds. You're going to have higher data rates. You're going to be able to have ability to use your broadband connection or high-speed internet in congested places. Congestion will be a thing of the past. But then on top of that, you're going to see new services. For example, you saw what happened with 4G. CDs disappears. People consume music now to streaming, and then you started to see how much people consuming video now on mobile devices. With 5G, you'll be able to see high definition videos everywhere, but then it's going to be more than that. You'll be able to play a console game in a mobile device, which is going to get streamed from the cloud. So an Indian consumer will see a multitude of new services coming to their device because of the higher speeds. And I don't think you're going to pay more for it.
Since we've spoken about what 5G means for Indians, let's get you to tell our viewers about what kind of 5G is getting installed and rolled out in India. You have a global footprint, and I must tell our viewers that Qualcomm has critical patents perhaps across the 4G, 5G, CDMA 2000, and perhaps even for 6G, who knows, they may not have disclosed that so far. They are the big bosses when it comes to telecom and all the critical technology that powers mobility. So for the question that I asked you, what's your sense about what it means?
Well, it basically, the way you need to think about it is you have a technology that is going to not only enable better mobile devices everywhere globally, but a technology that is going to be part of new industry that can develop. Even though 5G is already being deployed in other markets, what I think is unique about India is that India will bring 5G to scale and will have the ability to get the technology from 5G phones at every price point for everyone, but also to enable 5G in a number of different applications. For example, we can see how 5G can be used in agriculture with 5G connected drones or smart cameras that are going to be analyzing plant per plant. We're talking about per plant agriculture. We can see how that is going to change healthcare, making healthcare more available using telemedicine and connecting healthcare to a lot of different villages. You can see how this is going to change energy, making the grid more efficient. So 5G creates a big opportunity for India because it's still on its beginning and there's a lot of applications that are yet to be developed. As an example, for example, in India, we have been very active in ventures. We already incubated over 100 startup companies. Many of those companies are thinking about developing some of the future applications using 5G.
What do you think about India's plans for semiconductors self-reliance?
Okay, well, thank you for your kind words. Semiconductors, I think we learned through the supply chain crisis that semiconductors are important and they're going to be an essential technology for the digital economy. That's why you see activity all over the globe with governments now very interested in how to build a resilient global semiconductor supply chain. And I think India has a role to play. I think there's an opportunity for India also to work with their partners. I believe, and I said that when we're talking before, I don't believe one country can solve this problem alone. It's a problem for the entire global industry. Semiconductors are in everything, and that will continue to grow. India has an important role to play in its scale, in its talent pool, to build semiconductor manufacturing capabilities, whether it's a directly manufacture of semiconductors or bringing the supply chain that exists around semiconductors. And I think we saw the United States approve the US and Chips and Science Act. There's the European Chips Act. We see a lot of countries motivated to attract that industry, and I think that's a great opportunity.
Will all of these acts globally and India's efforts solve the semiconductor supply shortage?
I think we are getting behind the shortage. At least I can speak from Qualcomm. We're no longer see this as a problem. We made the prediction in the beginning of the year that supply and demand will normalize at the end of the calendar 2022. That's what we're seeing. It's not true for all companies, but we're mostly behind that. But I think the importance of those chip initiatives from many governments is more than solving the supply chain crisis, but it's about understanding from the crisis the importance of semiconductor, and the supply chain needs to be global, needs to be resilient, and needs to be diversified. Just natural disaster alone could create a supply chain crisis of semiconductors.
And do you think all the recent developments are ticking off those 2-3 critical points that you spoke about, diversify supply chains, global?
I completely believe that's the case. We've been very active, I think, working with governments on the development of those plans, because we're the largest fabless. We don't have a manufacturing. We rely on
I'm
foundries.
glad you said that, because that was my next question.
Yeah.
Just to explain to our viewers, what do you really do in semiconductors?
We're the largest fabless company, which means we outsource all of our manufacturing, and we, as a result, we become one of the largest customers of the semiconductor foundries in the world, whether they're Taiwan and Korea and China, in the United States and in Europe. And I feel that the importance of those initiatives is to make sure that we'll continue to see globally the capacity, the investment, and the resilience of that very important supply chain.
So if there's a good fab in India down the line, a few years down the line, would you give them some orders?
We will use it, absolutely.
That's it from me, Chaiti Narula. Keep watching India Today. For further news and updates, don't forget to log on to www.indiatoday.in or go ahead and download the app. A very good night and thanks for tuning in.
200 environmental and land defense activists were killed in 2021 globally. More than 3/4 of the killings took place in Latin America, where Colombia, Brazil, and Nicaragua also logged double-digit death tolls. It was the third consecutive year of increases for Mexico. In 2021, it was 54 and 30 in 2020. But this is not the shocking part of the report. Global Witness considers its report a baseline and said our data on killings is likely to be an underestimate given that many murders go unreported, particularly in rural areas and in particular countries. The victims died fighting resource exploitation and inland disputes. 27 of these deaths were related to mining. This is the highest number of any sector. And from the 27, 15 of those were in Mexico. In 2021, the killings of environmental activists in Colombia dropped to 33 from 65 in 2020. The Philippines saw fewer killings in 2021, 19 as compared to 30 in 2020. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, all 8 recorded victims were killed inside Virunga National Park. Virunga Park is home to some of the world's last mountain gorillas, but armed groups such as the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, known by its French acronym FDLR, the Mai Mai, and the M23 regularly wrestle for control of eastern Congo's natural resources. Global Witness called on governments to enforce laws that protect activists, while also ensuring companies to be accountable throughout their global operations and have zero tolerance for attacks on land defenders. Activists and communities play a crucial role as a first line of defense against ecological collapse, as well as being frontrunners in the campaign to prevent it.
Hello, you're watching India Today. I'm Aishwarya Paliwal. Let's start the show with the headlines. Explosive India Today investigation exposes Dawat-e-Islami's footprint in India. Pakistan Islamist organization is exploiting borderless technology to push its radical Islamist agenda in the country. Home Minister Amit Shah promises reservations for the Pahari community on his mission Kashmir, declares that youth will have laptops in hand instead of stones after Article 370 purge. Amit Shah will visit the terror hotbed of Baramulla tomorrow. Domestic help Yasir accused of using a ketchup bottle to kill J&K DG of prisons arrested after manhunt. Probe on to find out if the murder was an act of terror. Fresh Aam Aadmi Party versus LG showdown in the national capital. LG VK Saxena seeks a report on alleged power subsidy given by the Delhi government. Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia terms the action politically motivated. Election Commission seeks rationale behind the freebies from political parties. Parties to prove authentic information to voters about their election promises. More trouble for the film Adi Purush. Madhya Pradesh Home Minister Narottam Mishra writes to the centre seeking removal of what he calls objectionable scenes. Let's start the show with news coming from Jammu and Kashmir. Now, Union Home Minister Amit Shah is on a mega 3-day visit to J&K. In his Rajouri rally, Amit Shah hailed the valley's growth since the abrogation of Article 370. In a big boost to the centre's Naya Kashmir agenda, Amit Shah declared that the Pahari community, beside the Gujars and the Bakarwals, will soon get reservation in education and jobs as scheduled tribes. Here's what Amit Shah said in his message.